Someone may have gone to prison. But this story might be far from over. Just when Weatherfield believed one of its darkest chapters had finally come to an end, a surprising revelation has left fans asking one chilling question. Has Megan Walsh really disappeared from Coronation Street? Or is this only the beginning? Welcome back to Coronation Street Update, where we uncover every secret, every twist, and every hidden clue from the cobbles. And today's story could completely change the future of one of Corrie's most controversial villains. Because although Megan has finally been sentenced, there are already whispers about how she could make a dramatic return. And the person she might meet behind bars? Nobody saw that coming. At first, everything looked finished. Justice had finally caught up with Megan Walsh. After months of manipulation, deception, and emotional abuse, the truth could no longer stay buried. Will Driscoll finally found the courage to speak. The lies collapsed. The courtroom heard the evidence. And Megan was found guilty of grooming the teenager she had spent months controlling. For so long she had appeared untouchable. She fooled families. She fooled colleagues. She even convinced many people that she was the victim whenever suspicion started creeping closer. That ability to manipulate everyone around her made her one of Coronation Street's most unsettling villains in years. But eventually, the mask slipped. The carefully constructed image she had built for herself shattered in front of everyone. Yet even as the prison doors closed behind her, something didn't quite feel finished. Because the emotional damage Megan caused won't simply disappear. Will's trauma remains. Daniel Osborne continues trying to rebuild his life after discovering the horrifying truth about the woman he loved. Families across Weatherfield are still trying to process the betrayal. And that's what makes this story so powerful. A prison sentence might end the legal case, but it doesn't erase the emotional scars. However, just when viewers assumed Megan's chapter had reached its final page, an unexpected possibility emerged. And it changes everything. Beth Nixon, the actress behind Megan, has now revealed that she already has an idea about how the character could return to Coronation Street. Not through redemption. Not through escape. But through another familiar face already sitting behind prison walls. That familiar face is Lou Michaelis. Fans will remember Lou's unforgettable time on the cobbles before she herself ended up behind bars. Even after leaving Weatherfield, Lou continued appearing in prison scenes connected to Debbie Webster's storyline. Now imagine those same prison corridors. But with Megan walking through them. Beth Nixon believes that would create explosive television. In fact, she admitted she'd love Megan to bump into Lou inside prison. And according to Beth, Lou wouldn't be intimidated in the slightest. Quite the opposite. She believes Lou would put Megan firmly in her place. Suddenly, a whole new storyline begins to take shape. Because prison isn't simply the end. For some characters, it's an entirely new battlefield. Could Megan finally experience what it feels like to lose control? Could someone even more intimidating become her greatest threat? Or might prison simply teach Megan new ways to manipulate those around her? And that's where the mystery begins. Because viewers have never really seen Megan without power. Her confidence always came from controlling other people. She knew exactly how to exploit vulnerabilities. She knew when to charm, when to lie, when to threaten, when to pretend. But prison changes the rules. Inside those walls, status means very little. Old tricks may no longer work. And if Lou truly refuses to be manipulated, could Megan finally find herself becoming someone else's victim? Or would she somehow manage to build new alliances that eventually threaten Weatherfield all over again? Nothing about this feels predictable. But another revelation makes the situation even more fascinating. Despite Megan receiving the ending many viewers wanted, Beth Nixon herself hasn't ruled out returning. Far from it. She openly admitted she would love any opportunity to step back onto the Coronation Street set. She described her departure as deeply emotional. In fact, she revealed she cried throughout her final day filming. That alone tells us something important. This wasn't a rushed exit. This wasn't a character everyone wanted to forget. Behind one of the soap's darkest villains was an actress who became hugely respected by cast, crew, and audiences alike. And perhaps that's why Megan became such a memorable antagonist. Because beneath the cruelty, there was emotional complexity. Viewers hated Megan's actions, but many praised the performance that brought those disturbing moments to life. That combination is rare. Creating a villain audiences genuinely fear while still delivering believable emotional performances isn't easy. Beth managed exactly that. But perhaps the most revealing part of her comments wasn't about returning. It was about why Megan had to lose. Beth explained that everyone involved always knew Megan would eventually go to prison. That decision had been planned from the beginning. Why? Because this storyline wasn't simply about creating drama. It was about showing something incredibly important. That victims can find justice. Throughout the storyline, Will struggled to understand what had happened to him. He questioned himself. He doubted himself. He carried enormous guilt. Like many victims of grooming, he found it almost impossible to recognize that he had been manipulated. He believed he had willingly entered a relationship. Only gradually did the horrifying reality emerge. That psychological confusion became one of the storyline's strongest elements. Because grooming isn't always obvious. Manipulation rarely begins with fear. It often begins with trust, kindness, affection, and control. Beth explained that although real life doesn't always end with justice, recent real-world cases inspired parts of Megan's ending. Cases where female abusers were prosecuted. Cases where victims eventually found the strength to speak. Cases where prison sentences became possible. That realism gave Megan's downfall even greater emotional weight. But then another question appears. If the writers wanted justice, why leave the door open? Why allow fans to imagine future prison storylines? Why openly discuss possible returns? Perhaps because justice and consequence aren't always the same thing. Serving time doesn't automatically mean someone has changed. In many soap storylines, prison becomes the place where revenge begins. New friendships form. Old enemies reconnect. Dangerous plans quietly develop beyond the public eye. Could Megan emerge years later claiming she's changed? Would anyone believe her? Would Daniel? Would Will? Would Sam? Or would her arrival reopen every emotional wound the community fought so hard to heal? Then there's another possibility. What if Megan's return isn't about revenge at all? What if prison genuinely changes her? Could Coronation Street ever attempt one of its most controversial redemption stories? Many viewers would reject the idea immediately. Others might argue that understanding a character isn't the same as forgiving them. That debate alone could divide the audience. And Corrie has never been afraid of difficult conversations. Still, one obstacle remains impossible to ignore. Even if Megan returns, Weatherfield has a long memory. Daniel's heartbreak, Will's trauma, the devastation experienced by everyone caught in Megan's web. Those scars won't disappear simply because time passes. If she ever walks those streets again, every glance would carry suspicion. Every conversation would reopen old wounds. Every appearance would create tension. And perhaps that's exactly why the possibility feels so compelling. Because the emotional consequences would already exist before Megan even said a single word. But maybe the biggest clue isn't hidden inside the storyline. Maybe it's hidden inside Beth Nixon's excitement. Actors rarely speak so openly about future possibilities unless they genuinely believe there's unfinished potential. Whether that ever becomes reality remains unknown. But Coronation Street has surprised viewers countless times before. Characters written off forever have returned. Old enemies have resurfaced. Forgotten secrets have exploded years later. So could Megan eventually become one of those shocking comeback stories? Or will prison remain the final chapter for one of Corrie's darkest villains? For now, nobody knows. But if one thing is becoming increasingly clear, Megan Walsh's conviction may have delivered justice. It may have brought relief. It may even have closed one heartbreaking chapter. Yet the possibility of unfinished business still hangs over Weatherfield like a shadow waiting for the perfect moment to return. And if Megan ever walks back onto the cobbles, she won't just be facing familiar faces. She'll be confronting the consequences of every lie, every betrayal, every life she destroyed. The real question is, will prison change Megan? Or simply make her even more dangerous? Because sometimes, the most terrifying stories don't end when the prison doors close. Sometimes, that's exactly where the next chapter begins. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Coronation Street's biggest twists and future theories, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Coronation Street Update, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next explosive revelation from Weatherfield. Because another secret is always waiting. And the next shock could change everything.